Well, joining me now is Stanley Johnson, International Ambassador of the Conservative Environment Network, author and former Conservative MEP. And as father of Boris Johnson, I think we should refer to him as the first father at all times. Now, he's joined me here on Talking Pints, but we have to come clean, don't we, and say that we have actually had a drink together before.
Well, I'd say many a time and off, but I was, pretty much on the opposing side of you. Politically, yes. Nigel, you've got to admit it. You were pro-Brexit, I was anti-Brexit. I've got to say you won, and I accepted my punishment like a man.
I think what was interesting, even when that whole Brexit debate, and it got pretty bloody, you could say it was bloody. And by the way, cheers. Cheers. This is lager. I normally drink bitter, but...
By the way, I love the joke, talking pints.
Yeah.
Probably in Northern Ireland, you say pints anyway, you see. Anyway, we just had
that's all I get it.
We just had Arlene Foster on the show.
No, it was pretty bloody towards the end of the referendum, the debate that was going on. And then, of course, as I would see it, the complete refusal of much of the establishment to accept the result, and endless agonies in Parliament, and big front page newspaper headlines about judges and betrayal.
You mean the difficulty of getting the Brexit bill through and that kind of thing?
The difficulty of getting it through, plus a very well-funded attempt to push a second referendum upon the British people on the basis that they were too ignorant and stupid to understand what they'd done.
Well, the funds never came my way, I can tell you that.
I'm not saying they did, but listen, but the point I'm making is this. Yeah. We've always been able to disagree, but to do so in a pretty civilised way.
We have. Many is the bar which we have propped up over a period of months, and I noticed that I didn't meet you at lunch today because I didn't go there either.
No. I mean, Stanley, Brexit's finished now, isn't it?
This is the point, Nigel. This is the point. Look, nobody felt more upset than I did that we lost the campaign. But once we lost the campaign, I said, the great British people have voted. And they not only just voted once, they voted several times. They actually finally voted in the December 2019 election. There is no point in banging your head against the wall. We have to live with this. We have to make it work. That's my line.
And are we going to make it work?
We are. Quite sure about that. I think, for example, we will put into force the UK-EU withdrawal agreement. It is 693 pages. Most of it is probably in force already. OK, there's some little snippets going on about sausages in Northern Ireland. These are minor points. The broad outline is fixed.
Well, Arlene Phillips was on just before the break.
Yeah, I heard her.
And it's not just about sausages for her, is it? It's about whether they are fully a part of the United Kingdom or not. I mean, this is quite important stuff.
Of course, I understand that. But if we reckon that we have a free trade agreement, which we do, because that's what the withdrawal agreement was about. We have a trade agreement with the EU. The nature of that agreement is that we are going to reduce, as far as we can, all sorts of barriers to trade, and we're not going to come unstuck with a few sausages.
So, if it comes to it then, if we can't have free trade within our own country, with Northern Ireland, we may have to renege on part of what we've agreed or negotiated.
I don't see that. I simply don't see it happening. This bloc, this big bloc, which is, the geo-Europe, the geophysical bloc, which we remain a part of. We may have been separated from the EU, but there's no way we're not part of the Eurasian landmass, Nigel. That's where
we're an island, I thought. I was in the Channel today.
Well,
I think I'm splitting hairs. Of course, I accept we are very close to Europe in lots and lots of ways. I mean, I personally don't think the European Union will even be here in 10 years' time. There'll be a different configuration. I think there's so much. I mean, you were in Brussels. I was in Brussels. We're both MEPs. It was a very different Brussels when I was there to when you were there.
Nigel, I was lucky enough in 1973 to be one of the first British people, we call them Brits in those days, to be sent to Brussels. I was head of something called the Prevention of Pollution and Nuisances Division, and I've got to tell you, it was a tremendously exciting time because Britain played a major role in that form of environmental policy. OK, life has moved on, but we are still going to be playing a major part in Europe, and I'd like to see us do so through other EU-wide and Europe-wide institutions. I'd like us to be, for example, part of the European Environment Agency, which provides specifically for non-EU countries to be part. I'd like us to work with the Council of Europe on environmental issues. There's an awful lot of we can still do.
But of course, the Council of Europe is countries cooperating.
Yeah, of course.
As opposed to the European Union, where you actually have to give a fair amount of your power to the centre.
That is true. And of course, when I was there, it was tremendously exciting to be able to get things done by having this power at the centre. Yeah, the Commission. You could say, I'm a faceless bureaucrat. Little red-faced bureaucrat, you could say. Well, I enjoyed my time as a faceless bureaucrat, and I wouldn't have undone it now. But
when you were an MEP, did you enjoy being an MEP?
I very much did. I'm sorry I didn't overlap with you, Nigel, because it would have been fun. I did once sit next to Mr. Chirac, and I said, "Bonjour, Monsieur le Président," and he said, "Bonjour, Monsieur," and we shook hands. That was the only conversation I had with President Chirac, but I was jolly pleased to have that.
And I guess when you were there was, very little scrutiny. Even when I arrived in the European Parliament, there was not much scrutiny from the UK press as to what really went on there. And I sort of rather think I might have helped to change that ever so slightly.
Well, Nigel, I would draw your attention to the huge campaign we launched at the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, to ban the import of baby seals and seal products into Europe. Now, those who were MPs in those days, and there's some of them still alive today, remember this as very, very painful because they get more and more letters on this and everything. And we did make an impact on some of these. And I remember campaigning with Brigitte Bardot, actually, outside.
Well, why not?
Yeah, and I once sent her a note after saying, do you think we might have lunch?
I'm sure you did.
Yeah, I got a note back from her chef de cabinet, which said, "Madame Bardot vous remercie, mais elle ne voit pas la nécessité to have lunch."
Yeah.
Well, there you go. I mean, you take these things on the chin when they come. But I'm not going to ever denigrate the 20, 30 years I spent on the whole European scene, but we are on a different scene now.
Yeah.
And the crucial thing is to work with them, particularly on things like climate change.
Stanley, I want to work with our European neighbours. I absolutely do, but as sovereign countries, and that's how I feel about it. And
so many people did.
Yeah.
The majority of the British public agreed with you.
But you talked about seals and seal products there. So the environment, saving elephants, these things have been part of you for a very long time.
They certainly have. I grew up on Exmoor, for heaven's sake. I've still got a farm on Exmoor. You can hardly be on Exmoor without seeing the great sense of nature. But the other thing is you use your mind. What is really going down the drain? What is going down the drain is nature. Colossally, 60% of the wildlife of this country gone in the last 50 years. These are crucial things, and they're economically vital. There's a gentleman called Mr. Dasgupta who produced a fantastically important report recently about the sheer economic importance of keeping nature going. So for me, it's nature protection. Above all, I want to get nature protection, a commitment to nature protection in the current Environment Bill, which is going through. If you remember, way back in 2008, when the Labour government, the last Labour government, was in power, the Conservatives actually helped them put into the climate bill of 2008 a target which said you actually got to get to net zero by X, Y, or Z.
But it's impossible, isn't it?
It may be impossible to get to net zero. Who can tell? But I want to do the same thing for nature protection. A whole lot of people.
I'm with you. Look, I'm with you.
Good, Nigel. Good.
On habitat.
Fantastic.
On reforestation.
Good, Nigel.
Good reforestation. I'm with you on all of that.
You are going to be the banner waver.
I'm with you on all of
one.
that, and I'm appalled.
Yeah.
By some of the fishing methods we use in the sea, by plastic in the seas, many of these things.
Plastic, crucial.
Terrible thing. But Stanley,
now.
my problem is this. Our complete obsession with carbon reduction, CO2 reduction, and this country has made some commitments that it can never, ever meet, and that if it does meet them, is going to impoverish ordinary working people. And that I find that a real problem.
Can I pick up your 2 points? Okay. Commitments we'll never meet. Well, we are still more or less on track to do what we said we'd do by 2035. 2035, we've got a target. 2050, we've got a target. We are more or less on track. John Gummer, Lord Deben, keeps on reminding us we're not totally on track and we need to get more energy and more effort behind him, and he's behind us, and he's right about that. Will it impoverish poor people? It's perfectly obvious that we have to find ways to make sure it doesn't hit white van man. And why are we going to do that? Because actually the cost of dealing with climate change is tiny compared with the benefits of dealing with climate change. And this is something that the Chancellor of the Exchequer is going to realise.
But that all sounds wonderful.
That
all sounds
wonderful. Is wonderful.
But here's the point. We are emitting about 1% of global CO2.
Probably true.
And as I understand it, China will build 100 new coal-fired power stations in 2021.
Fine.
And between China and India I mean, those two countries alone are producing almost a third of global CO2.
And why do you think
so why should we? But here's my point, and this matters really, and particularly because one of the reasons that the Conservatives have got this big majority at the moment, and the Red Wall and all the rest of it, yes, it was Brexit, yes, it was border controls, but it was also things like, you know, when a steelworks in Redcar closes down, but that production moves to India, and the products made in India are then shipped back to Britain.
Nigel,
and this is a real worry to me.
And this is a worry which is increasingly being understood. OK, the G7 didn't come out as hard and as firmly as you and I maybe would have liked on the need for carbon border taxes. But people like Liam Fox are pushing that hard. Carbon border taxes are what you impose or threaten to impose on countries like China and India.
But again, Stanley, that's all well and good for wealthy people living in Richmond. Because what it does is it pushes the price of everything up.
It doesn't. On the contrary, you rehome those industries. Instead of actually getting possibly inferior, certainly more polluting products from abroad, you find that you're making them back home in
Do you
Britain.
really think we can bring back manufacturing, chemical plants, steel making, and still head towards these targets?
I don't see why not. I don't see why not at all. And in any event, if you actually look at the global impact, it is probably true to say that having those products made in China with less efficient methods, and you mentioned the 1 million megawatt plants at 1,000 megawatts, which are going on one a week, probably in terms of the actual impact on the environment, it's much better to rehome those industries, produce the stuff here.
Well, if that could happen, I'd love it. Now, you mentioned the G7.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happened at the G7 was Biden tried to get a resolution, quite a strong resolution, condemning the Chinese Communist Party government for their treatment of the Uyghur Muslim minority. And it didn't happen because Mrs. Merkel and Macron and Boris Johnson seem to have sort of taken the view that China or the Chinese Communist Party are our friends and allies. And it seems to me that this is perhaps another... Brexit's over, but I think...
Nigel,
you seem to be very close to China. I mean, it was said that you've been to the Chinese ambassador and given a message back to 10 Downing Street. I mean, I want to ask you straight, what is your relationship with the Chinese Communist Party?
I'll tell you something, there was nothing secret about my meeting with the Chinese ambassador, because I thought I was typing a little note to a lady in the government, and it turns out I copied it to the Today programme. That is because I was typing in a taxi going home and I clicked on the wrong button. No. I'd never pretended I wasn't seeing the Chinese ambassador. Why shouldn't I? I'm an ordinary person and an individual citizen. Plus B, I've been going to China since we first tried to go to China on a motorcycle in 1961 when I was trying to follow Marco Polo's route. We got as far as Calcutta, but we couldn't get into China. And I've been going, and 3 of my novels have been about China.
I know that
it's madness to be anti-Chinese. It's absolutely madness. I quite agree with you about the Uyghurs. That's perfectly obvious. Yeah. But we're not trying to bargain.
Or stealing industrial secrets, or so many. What about Hong Kong? What about Hong Kong? Come on, I mean, there was a very important agreement that was made. Autonomy till 2047. They've broken it in every way, Stanley.
Hong Kong, I've been going to Hong Kong since 1961. I understand completely what you were saying. And of course, the 1997 agreement needs to be respected.
It's not being respected.
Fine. And there's no doubt other things which we're not doing. But there's no point in saying we're going to send our warships to take on the Chinese Navy. It doesn't make sense.
Stanley, we're going to disagree on that. Finally, I must ask you something. It's not political. Your son's Prime Minister. I'm not going to go into any policy details. I wouldn't do that. But one question about his personality. Is he a decisive person?
Totally decisive. I mean, basically... he knows what is going to happen. He knows we are going to get out of this COVID with success, and we are going to move relentlessly forward on some of the key policy goals. And what are they? Climate change, biodiversity, levelling up, Nigel, and cheers.
Well, cheers. Well, that was Stanley Johnson, and we were just talking pints. That was great. Thank you very much indeed. Terrific.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.